Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a machine that is both a symbol of Israeli ingenuity and a quiet legend in the world of combat aviation, the Kfir, a fighter jet born out of necessity, a jet that was not supposed to exist, and yet a jet that went on to impress the world, a machine with a story that is honestly one of the most interesting origin stories of any Cold War-era jet. The Kfir is what happens when your country gets embargoed, told no, shut out from buying the aircraft you want, yet you still have to defend your skies and your borders and your new nation. Israel wanted the Mirage 5, they were supposed to license build it, they had the deal, then politics cut the supply lines. In a moment Israel realized they had to choose, either they give up and remain dependent on foreign powers, or they design and build something of their own. And that moment is when the long path toward the Kfir started. The Israel Aerospace Industries team did not start from zero. They used what they knew, they used what they had. They rebuilt from the Mirage DNA, but they also injected new muscle into it. They replaced the French engine with the American General Electric J79 turbojet, the very same basic engine family that powered the F-4 Phantom. This was a signature move. This gave the Kfir more thrust, more raw straight line power, more potential. With the smarter delta wing refinements, with the Israeli avionics and early electronic warfare integrations, the Kfir began to evolve from the modified Mirage clone into its own thing, not a copy, a new airframe reality, a fighter that ended up being faster in climb, faster in acceleration, better in the dash. The Kfir was basically a Mirage on steroids. A nation that had been blocked from buying aircraft built a fighter that not only reached the same tier but in some specific profiles beat its European ancestor. Imagine how much pride that must have delivered to the Israeli aviation community at that time. They had taken aerospace control of their own future. When the Kfir entered service, this was the era before the F-15 and F-16 were fully loaded into the Israeli Air Force. So for a moment in time the Kfir was their premium indigenous front-line fighter. This was a national flex. It was also a giant experiment. They had to learn how to integrate an American power plant on a French aerodynamic philosophy while installing Israeli avionics. That is triple ecosystem engineering at once. The Kfir flew real missions. This jet saw real air-to-air combat environments. The Kfir flew in moments where the Middle East skies were tense and unpredictable. Sometimes the Kfir arrived to target packages acting not as a pure dogfighter but as a deep strike fighter bomber. The Kfir could carry impressive amounts of ordnance on multiple hard points. For Israel it became a flexible sword. It could dogfight, it could bomb, it could perform interception roles. It had range that made sense in the regional threat geometry. At the same time the Kfir had limitations. High-energy delta wings have phenomenal performance at speed but require discipline in low-speed maneuvers. You needed to fly the Kfir like you respected physics. The pilots spoke about how you could dominate if you kept your energy state high. This is the legacy of Delta logic. This is similar to Mirage pilots. This is similar to modern Rafale pilots. You do not bleed speed for nothing. You fight in the vertical. You fight in the fast lane. The Kfir also became one of the most exported Israeli fighters ever. The United States leased Kfirs under the name F-21 for dissimilar air combat training. The Kfir became an aggressor aircraft for the United States Navy and United States Marine Corps. That is such a powerful testament. Think about what that means. The same country that Israel had once gone to as a customer, now the United States was flying Israeli jets to train American pilots. There is poetry in that. If a fighter is chosen to play the bad guy in Top Gun-style training environments it means one thing. That fighter is a challenge. That fighter has energy and flight performance that can stress your best pilots. You do not lease weak jets for aggressive programs. You lease something that punches above weight. The Kfir earned that role. Colombia flew Kfirs, Sri Lanka flew Kfirs, Ecuador flew Kfirs. Israel upgraded versions of the Kfir with new avionics, new radar, new weapons compatibility lists. The jet grew, the jet matured, the jet refused to retire. The Kfir is one of those fighters that never became a poster megastar like the MiG-21 or the F-16, but among pilots who understand energy fighters, among engineers who respect hybrid program birth stories, the Kfir is respected as one of the smartest resurrection hacks in fighter design. a jet that was born because someone told them they could not have the French version, a jet that exists because Israel refused to accept dependence. Look at the cockpit upgrades that happened over the decades. Look at the hands-on throttle and stick logic evolution. Look at the navigation pods, the recce packs, the precision weapons that became integrated. The Kfir stayed relevant by becoming smarter. Israel kept modifying the avionics so the platform could use newer generation weapons even though the airframe was a child of the 1970s. The geometry of the Kfir is very recognizable. The nose, the intakes, the stiff delta, the addition of the small kinreds that Israel added for improved low-speed handling and better control authority near the stall edges. These kinreds matter. They gave pilots more confidence near the dogfight envelope bottom corners. They gave the jet more lift in high angle of attack situations. This matters when you are a delta platform and you want to push low-speed turn performance higher. The kinreds are one of the most visually distinctive elements. That alone makes the Kfir look aggressive and predatory even when parked. It has a very sharp look, a look that to this day feels modern enough to not seem like a Cold War leftover. Another thing, the Kfir helped Israel prepare mentally, organizationally and academically for the next chapter. That next chapter was the Levi, the famous Israeli 4th-gen fighter that was killed right before it could fly into service. The Levi program probably would not even have been attempted if the Kfir program had not succeeded, because the Kfir proved to Israel that it is possible to independently design world-class fighters. This means that the Kfir is not just a fighter, it is a mentor. It is a stepping stone in the history of Israeli aerospace independence. From Kfir to Levi to the modifications and tech work for the F-15 and F-16 and later the F-35, the Israeli defense tech scene is now elite. The Kfir is part of the root system that enabled that evolution. Even now, there are Kfirs flying. There are modernized Kfir variants with new radars like degrade systems. That means there are Kfirs today that have 21st century radar technology even if the airframe itself was aluminum designed decades ago. This is a paradox that aviation people love. A jet born in the analog era can still carry digital era sensors and digital era weapons and still be tactically meaningful for some air forces with limited budgets. That is insane. That is efficient. That is proof that the foundational aerodynamic concept of the Kfir was never obsolete. It was always capable of growth. When people talk about famous jets they often focus on the iconic giants. The MiG-29, the F-14, the Su-27, the Tornado, the F-16. The Kfir is not in that household tier, but quietly the Kfir has had one of the most unique and impressive life cycles of any fighter of its generation. It was born out of embargo. It was born out of political necessity. It became a serious combat machine. It became an aggressor for America. It became an export product, and it is still in the air in the 21st century with modern radars and avionics. That is the test of a design. How long it stays relevant, how long it can evolve, how many new ideas it can absorb without needing an entirely fresh airframe. When I look at the Kfir, I see a jet that represents stubborn innovation, a jet that represents national resilience, a jet that represents a refusal to become dependent, and more importantly, a jet that proved to the world that Israel could be a first-class aerospace power. If you strip away all politics and all history, and you simply look at the performance envelope, the Kfir had a top speed pushing above Mach 2. The Kfir had high climb rates. It had real dogfight viability at altitude. It had a weapons suite that matured over time to include precision-guided munitions. It had aggressive appearance and crisp handling. So it is no surprise that Israeli pilots who flew it speak about it with a special tone. It was not perfect. It had hot engine start quirks. It demanded discipline in the low-speed regime. It punished sloppy pilots. But the pilots respected that. The Kfir was a jet that wanted to be flown with intent. If you brought commitment and aggression and understanding of energy management you could use it like a knife. The Kfir is a machine that deserves more mainstream attention. It is a story about engineering. It is a story about geopolitics. It is a story about adaptation. And it is a story about national growth inside aerospace. Even today when someone sees a Kfir take off with modern avionics inside they realize how strange but powerful this combination is. Old bones. New brains. Still dangerous. Still relevant. Still beautiful. Still fast. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into an underappreciated fighter, Hit like, subscribe for more content like this, and comment below what aircraft you want us to explore next.